There we go. So, as Bruno said, it's a journey in the opposite direction to what we normally hear about, which is rookie to rockstar. There's a great Power BI guide called just that by Reza Rad. So I flipped it the other way around, and it's a story of Chris, who was my apprentice, and myself. And I needed an apprentice, or I wanted an apprentice to see what I could bring to the community, help someone along who needed it. And Chris needed the help. So this is his story. This is not a technical session. You feel free to ask me technical questions at the end. I have timed this, and it tends to come out a little bit quicker. Also, because I'm nervous, I talk quickly. So tell me to slow down if you want me to. So this is Chris. Meet Chris. He doesn't look anything like that in real life, but for today's story, that's what he's going to be. He's going to be a mushroom. So Chris the mushroom was stuck in a stale environment. He was devoid of growth. So he woke up every morning, he went about his daily life, but didn't really feel like he was very fulfilled. He's got a couple of kids, and you have to work to support the family. So what Chris actually did was he was a truck driver. Yep, there's the truck. Now his was red actually, but this one will do for now. And he used to drive every day. He's got a very good brain on him, so he was getting bored. He didn't know what to do with his life. He was also in his part-time, and this is where we get from the rock star to the rookie. Chris is a bass guitarist or a bassist, actually a six-string bassist. So that picture is accurate, although it is a guitar. And he wanted to do more. So one day at a pub, me and Chris were talking. You see, Chris is on the left, and he's very grey and pale because he's a bit bored with what he's doing with his life at the moment. And there's me, all vibrant and full of life on the side, because I love tech and I love doing what I do. So we were having a question. We were just having a conversation, and Chris was like, "I need more. I need to do more with my life. I need my brain to be fulfilled." My suggestion is, what about a tech career? And we started talking about some things he could do in tech. So we've got Excel, we've got SQL, we've got Power BI, we've also got Python. What could we do with those things? And I see Chris has gained a lot of color because he's like, wow, that's a lot of areas I could apply. They all sound exciting, but where do I start? There's, I don't know any of those things. Where do I start with all of that? And we sat down, we had a conversation, and I'll freely admit we actually got it wrong. So what I would recommend, and it was an earlier conversation or an earlier session where someone mentioned that you're don't take for granted what your audience knows. So because I've been doing tech for a long, long time, I thought, right, we'll start with Power BI because that's graphical. It's you can click and drop, and it's a nice place to start because at least it's a visual thing rather than going to SQL or Python and being in the coding land. What I hadn't appreciated was there's actually an assumption that about tables. There's columns, there's rows, you can sum them up. You know how you play with data. Completely missed that. So Chris did struggle a bit with his first project, which was is we're starting to walk now. He's got Power BI open. He's got a friend of his. He runs a local restaurant, and we did some analysis, or Chris did some analysis with me, assisting where he needed some help. So the question was, when it's sunny, when it's cloudy, does that actually affect what gets sold on the day? And because this is a normal restaurant and not a university exercise where your data set is awesome or maybe slightly tweaked to have something wrong that's easy to fix. This was real world data, and it had real world problems. And one of those problems was a lot of the food was bundled under one header, like miscellaneous. So if the restaurant only ran a promotion on a certain type of food for a couple of days, they didn't bother putting it in the system as to what it actually was. So that caused us some issues, which we had to smooth out and make some assumptions and try and get the owner of the restaurant to remember, what special did you run on that day. But that was actually really good practice for understanding that your data's usually got problems and how do you fix it. And I would say, or what I tried to put on Chris, is that communication will be your biggest skill from the beginning to the end. Now, Chris has got communication skills in buckets. He's very eloquent, very capable. It's just that he wasn't in a job where he actually got to use that very much. So that's why I was confident that he would be able to do this. So anyway, got started, and so we're off. We're walking. We're in Power BI world at this point. Up next, we engaged him on a proper apprenticeship in the UK. So that means he got an hour and a half's worth of remote training each week, and they would set him certain tasks. And what they chose to start him off with was actually Python. So now we're very much in the code. We've gone from graphical Power BI to very code heavy Python, and very strict. You have to have your spaces in, which blew my mind because I've never done Python. Like you have to have your tabs and your spaces in the right place, or that might fail, which is very rigid. Now that's kind of a good place to get started with coding because it enforces discipline. But on the other hand, it's not very forgiving. If you make a mistake, it can be very hard to find. So anyway, that robot is supposed to be dancing. Why isn't he dancing? Never mind. So yeah, so he got his project, which I believe was setting up like a movie store where you could book in and book out videos. So it's an old school demo. Maybe let's say DVD is a bit more modern. And he did really well with it. He was frustrated at times because I couldn't really help him very much when he had problems, which was an issue. He was on his own until he could get in contact with his apprenticeship. So what I would recommend is, if you are thinking of putting someone through an apprenticeship or going through an apprenticeship yourself, make sure that the support is there for when you need it, because he did get quite frustrated, understandably, that he'd reach a deadblock, and I couldn't help him all that much. I was able to a large extent because data is data, and I could think in that kind of way, and I can also be very meticulous and go, well, I know they have to line up now, so let's have a look at that. So helping him think in a way, break the problem down into chunks. What's it likely to be? Try that, try this, try that, but also a little bit of version control so that you don't, by trying to fix one problem, introduce a new one. Anyway, about 18 months into our training, Chris is now a virtual ninja, as you can see him leaping around the screen. He's got a little bit of knowledge in SQL, a little bit in Python, a little bit Power BI, so he's getting quite a broad skill base now. Now, unfortunately, with the role I do, which is kind of senior support and advanced SQL, I wasn't actually able to help Chris that much in terms of give him real world tasks. It never materialized. So what we ended up doing is looking at job roles that were available and that I thought Chris would have a good start with. And then we started training on interview prep, how to be confident. Also, it's okay to say that you don't know something. So don't try and bluff. If you don't know the answer, that's a perfectly acceptable answer. You're going for a junior role. If you try and bluff it and get it wrong, you've got less chance of getting the role. And that is me.
Next we have is Edward Pollack. So I think, Edward, you have got access to sharing your screen. So yeah, you can crack on.
All right, well, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. This presentation is all about, so in the SQL Server, new features are added in every version, and some of them are transformative. They can take your old messy code and do amazing things that make it faster, better, shorter, easier to read. And this things like string ag, string split, the percentile functions to do medians. This presentation is about things like that. And this is really just about two functions that are very similar, greatest and least. So we're going to take our cruddy SQL and turn it into great SQL. This is who I am. I'm a data platform MVP. I've done a whole mountain of stuff out there in the world, but we don't have time to talk about that. So we'll just get past my old umbrella picture and get on with it. So we're going to talk about here is actually an agenda. Why not? What are greatest and least? What do we do with these functions? Why are they great? Why should we care about them? What did our old terrible code look like? The stuff we used to write that worked. It gave us the results we wanted, but really it was scary. And what does our new shiny code look like? We take and we use these new functions instead. What do the results look like, and why is it so much better? And then we're done. It's the lightning talk. We can do that. So Greatest and least. These are not like min and max. They are completely different. There's no aggregation involved by default with them. What they basically do is you provide a list of columns to them, and they will give you the largest for greatest or the smallest least of all the values. And you can use any number of columns. There's a limit. It's 254. But if you put 254 columns into this, I'm impressed. I want to hear about your use case. It's crazy. It's not an aggregate function. Again, it's very important. This is not something we do group by, sum, min, max, count, whatever. This is a scalar function. So you can just use it in your queries, and all it does is take it the biggest or smallest value and give it back to you. This is new. It was introduced in 2022, so about a year ago at Summit, we started hearing about this. These are ANSI standard functions, so being brought to SQL Server was great. We can now use them here in addition to everywhere else. And the key is that the old code we used to write to do the mins and maxes and all that like this, it was ugly. Like doing greatest and least before 2022 meant a lot of really ugly stuff that formed poorly and was hard to read. Yeah, and up to 254. I can't imagine I'd ever need that many columns in a query at one time, but I'm sure you can think of a reason. You'll tell me about it later, and that's great. Here's what our old code used to look like back in the day. So there's 3 different options here we can look at and get a chuckle with. This is the most common thing people used to do. So you have a bunch of columns, and you want to get a last modified time. And you have 4 different columns. You want the smallest or the most recent value. In this case, we want the most recent value. So you make a case statement and start off by saying if order date is bigger than all the rest of the columns, then order date. If expected delivery date is bigger than all the remaining columns, then expected delivery date. When picking completed when is greater than everything left, that one. Otherwise, you have only 1 column left and you're done. Notice I had to include is null because some columns are nullable, and we have to deal with that. You can't just do equalities and equalities against nullable columns. NC nulls will make your life miserable. And so this is kind of long. You kind of get what's going on here, but it's long, it's messy, and a lot of people will stop and have to read it slowly to think about what's going on here. And if you have more columns than 4, this gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you need the most recent time or the first modified time from 5 columns, 10 columns, this gets crazy quickly and hard to read. Again, it's just case statements evaluating column values, and it's simple, but it's also long and verbose and messy. Could also do this. You can have a subquery where you union all your values together like this, 1 select statement per value, and then union them together, and then you get the max. And that works, but it performs poorly because you have all this aggregation going on here and 4 different subselects. It performs terribly. A little easier to read, sort of, kinda, but it performs terribly. It really does. Or if you're very, very creative, you can do this. I love this. You can do a CTE with an unpivot to get your most recent modified time or your first modified time or whatever. This is crazy. You can do this. I thought of it. It's silly. I don't know why you'd ever want to do this, though, because it's ugly as all heck, and it's really hard to understand what's going on. And anybody reading this is going to lose their minds. So please don't do this. If you have this in your code, congratulations. It's really confusing. You're maximizing confusion. Great job. Here's what our code can look like now. We can take and simply replace all that mess with these things. Greatest, and I can put in order date, expected delivery date, completed when, last edited when as last modified time, or least of those columns to get a first modified time. It can be used in any data type that you can compare with an inequality. So you can really use it in anything you want. Do know that the data types matter. If you plug in different data types in there, it's going to try to evaluate them and cast and convert them. Always be aware of that. So you have a date versus a date time or a string versus an int. You might want to cast them, but you're going to do that anyway. You always want to manage your data types correctly so you don't have automatic implicit conversions going on. But it's 1 line of code. We just replaced 10 or 30 or however many lines of code with 1 line of code. Isn't that beautiful? Yes, it is. And it performs better. It's just simply a query. And so it's the same cost as it would be for reading these columns, which is basically the same as just selecting them. Greatest, least, done. Our old versions required 12 lines of code for the first one, 9 lines of code for the second one, and 26 lines of code for the third one. And they got replaced with 1 line of code that will definitely perform better. It'll be easier to read, easier to understand. You can aggregate these if you want to. You can take and wrap your greatest and least into a max or a min to take, the greatest modified time or the least of all the times. So these are scalar functions. You can wrap them in aggregations, min, max, count, whatever you want, because why not? You can do that. You can aggregate them. So what's next? Use this code. If you have ugly code from the past that does crazy mins and max kind of stuff over many columns, use this instead. Because they're ANSI compliant, it's portable. You can use this in MySQL, Postgres, and lots of other flavors of SQL. You can refactor your old poorly performing code to use these new functions to just perform better and be easier to read. And if you don't have 2022, do what I do and put some comments in your code or make notes somewhere. Document the fact that we can use these new functions soon, and they're really, really valuable. That way we don't forget later. So when you have 2022, you can begin using them, and people will love these. They're great functions. They're easy to use. They perform better. They use less lines of code. They can really transform scary SQL into beautiful SQL. So to wrap up with our 1 minute to go, these are clean, amazing, great performing functions that can give you the largest or smallest value from any set of columns, up to many, many, many columns, 54. You can aggregate them if you need to with any aggregation function, because again, it's just a scalar function. That's all these really are, just scalar functions. They're not magic, it's just a scalar function. Where lots of scalar functions out there. And they perform much better than anything we thought of before. No question about it. And once you have 2022, you have this and you're all good. So that is everything I have. If you have any questions for me about this content, you want recommendations, you want to refactor code, feel free to reach out to me, ask questions, find me on social media, LinkedIn, whatever, and that's it. So thank you very much for having me. I will now pass this on to the next speaker who will have something else awesome for you. So thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Edward, for sharing your knowledge. And yeah, next we have Lucrecia, and sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but yeah, you have got presenter right. So now she's going to talk about prepare for Power BI Data Analyst Associate using free resources. So now you can share your screen and yeah, start.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And are you able to see my screen?
Yes, can see your screen as well. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this beautiful event. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm going to be sharing about how to prepare to the PL 300 Microsoft Data Analyst Associate certification from Microsoft. My name is Lucrecia Krause. I work as an enterprise solution architect for Hewlett Packard. I also lead a user group. I'm a mentor and a speaker. So as you know, data is changing, and how companies are generating quintillions of data. That's huge amount of data. Businesses are depending on the ability of people to get insights from the data. The data analyst is the person that is converting this data into insights to the companies, and is the highest in demand job worldwide right now. Then in the other side, we have Microsoft Power BI that is in the leading magic quadrant of Gartner. And then we have Microsoft that is providing these several certifications. The Microsoft, the Power BI analyst is under the Microsoft Power BI platform, and is the one that is right here. Microsoft has journeys, how you can prepare to be a data analyst. They are recommending for data analysts to start with the PL 300. This is at the medium experience level, so it's other areas that they recommend certification, but you can prepare on your own. So what I'm going to be walking you through is the different options. If you go into the instructor-led, usually is expensive. You need to pay for that, and they do it condensed in 4 to 6 days. The amount of data is a lot. It's hard to process and learn all of that. A lot is hands-on experience. So I personally feel that the self-paced option is a better option because you can do it at your own pace, and also you can relearn something that you need to practice a little bit more. All of these learnings are free with Microsoft Learn. They recommend this particular path, but I'm going to show to you the different options. So the first thing that you will need to do is you will need to go into Microsoft Learn. That's the platform that Microsoft uses. You will need to create your user, and then you can start exploring the learning paths. If you see the learning paths, they have a lot of information, but if you start at this level, is 4,736 modules, and you are like, where do I start? So then you can customize your learning, and then you can start adding what is that you are interested, but still is a lot of information, and it's really hard to follow. Then here, so then the next area that you can start looking at is is a syllabus. In this syllabus is similar to what you will get that when you are doing like a class where the professor gives you. So here you can start looking into more details of what is that Microsoft recommends for you to do, and then you can start clicking save. So this one is going to start popping up into your profile. Then the other thing that you can do is in the user group that we have been doing some mentoring sessions, and what I did is you are able to personalize your own collections inside the Microsoft Learn. So what I did is I create these different levels, and depending on where you are at, if you are getting started, you can go into this one. This is the Microsoft where to start. So here they have all the information of what is the Power BI, how to use cases. They have the how to install. So this one is for someone that is really starting out. Then if you're at the entry level, then you can go to this other that is going to guide you in sequence. What are the prerequisites to learn? So they are building in each other. And then so on, intermediate and experience. So here are all the different collections that we create. And as people are asking questions, I'm modifying if it's another skill that they need to add in between. Is roughly 60 hours, but depending how you're practicing, but is working so far really nice because it's creating some order how to use all these great materials that Microsoft has for us. Then the other area that you can start to complement your learning is dashboard in a day. So Microsoft has this partnership with partners, and they provide these events for free, like dashboard in a day. Sometimes they are 6-8 hours. I have seen some that are 2 days, completely free, and they are going to give you downloads and hands-on of what you are learning. That's really good. Then the other one is the training days. This one is Microsoft trainers. These ones are shorter, 1, 2, 3, 4 hours, but it's another great alternative, and you can start looking at the different topics, different languages, different time zones. Then they also have labs. Inside of these learnings are labs. Some of the labs are being discontinued, but they are implementing in GitHub. So you just need to look at your modules are going to guide you. All about your learning is also practicing. So you can go into these data sets. Kaggle is one, so you can download a data set so you can start practicing depending in which industry you are and your interest. They are really good. And then Goblins, the same thing. They have the other data sets. And all of this is real data sets that are clean and good to go for us to use. The other area is the Microsoft user groups, that now the new name is Fabric user groups. They have these areas where people that are learning or more experienced, so you go here into galleries and then Power BI, and then you go into this area. So they have like theme galleries, they have tutorials, so you can get inspirations and practice everything that you are learning. And once that you get more experience, you can also submit your themes, your reports, and people comment on your work. Is really nice. Then the next area, once that you learn all of this, and if you see, is at least between 60 and 100 hours of learning and practice, then you can start diving into the exam. Here is a study guide that Microsoft provides, where is what is that they are going to be testing, what is that you need to know. So here is all in detail. The percentage in the exam is by all these areas. So what I recommend is you can download the PDF, and then you can start documenting. Okay, I already learned this, and this is how we are. And then for the here is a certification page. Here is where you can schedule your exam. And the last one is Microsoft also provides a sandbox where you can practice the exam. They have also some videos that you can watch, is for a total of 2 hours. And then when you register for the exam, you need to create another profile. The exam is $165, but if you register to the learning days, you can get some vouchers for free. And here is, if you want to connect, this is the different user groups that I volunteer, and different events where you can learn more about all these learnings. And thank you very much. I really like presenting here and everything that I'm learning from the other presenters. So I pass the slides to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that information, because this was such an informative lightning talk, because many people literally don't know where to go when they want to start their certification journey. So thank you so much for sharing all those resources. And that 10-minute actually gave like a pretty good overview of what people can actually go and refer to when they want to start their certification journey especially with Power BI Data Analyst Associate. So thank you so much.
Oh no, thank you, and thank you everyone for your sharings.
Thank you so much. So yeah, our next speakers we have is, sorry, I'll quickly share my slide. So yeah, next one we have is Shannon and Stephanie. They are going to talk something around demystifying Fabric and Power BI licensing. Wow, this is something I am looking forward to see as well. So Shannon and Stephanie, I think you both have got presentation rights. So yeah, stage is yours.
Thank you, Prakati. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Shannon, are you here?
Did Shannon just leave because she
Sorry,
was
I just got kicked out. I'm back.
Oh gosh.
Okay.
Apologies,
Let me
I'm
just
here. Let me
check.
go
Yeah,
ahead and
but yeah, both of you should be there. You both have got presenter right, so you should be good to go. Yeah, perfect. Can see your screen as well.
Okay, sorry about
Great,
that.
thank you.
Wasting this precious time. The clock is ticking. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We have 10 slides to go through in 10 minutes, and we are going to share with you what we know. We know as much as the rest of everyone else knows. Not a lot has been published about fabric licensing, so we have combed through what exists out there, and we're giving you our interpretation of it. We definitely want to mention, stay tuned for upcoming announcements because more will be revealed. But if you want to start planning, we're going to show you how now. Stephanie, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure, real fast. I'm Stephanie Bruno. I am here in sunny Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania today. I am a principal BI architect at iLink Digital, where I am working with customers on mainly fabric POCs for the last 6 months. So I've really been living in this fabric licensing world.
And my name is Shannon Lindsay. I'm also living in this fabric world, which sounds like some kind of a weird metaphor. But I work at Microsoft on the learning materials for Microsoft Fabric. So speaking of Microsoft Fabric, what is this thing? If anyone here is new to Fabric, you are not behind the curve. It is still in preview. So Fabric is this single unified data platform that really is supposed to be able to take care of everything you need for enterprise analytics, from the data lake all the way to the people using the data in the office. It includes everything you see here in these workloads, from data integration all the way through data engineering, data warehousing, real-time analytics, and then all the way through to being able to take action on your data in Data Activator. Fabric is delivered as a single software as a service product, which means there's less to manage from the IT side of the house, which for someone like me is great. But then the question is, how does someone like me use this? So how does the licensing work? Fabric storage, so everything that you're doing under the hood, all of your data, everything that lives in there is stored in OneLake. So that's your first consideration. The first thing you need to think about is your storage. Fabric is then made up of workloads that use serverless compute power, which is known as capacity. We're going to be talking about capacity a lot in this 10 minutes. And then finally, we need to think about user licenses. If you are familiar with Power BI, this piece of the puzzle will make sense to you, but now we've added all of this other complexity beneath it. And Stephanie is going to take us through that on the next slide.
So let me just dive into this a little bit more. We put it kind of like the worst first. So capacity is the most complicated and difficult for what you need to know. The free trials available today are an F64, which is equivalent to a Power BI Premium P1 capacity, but there are some differences. So differences between FSKUs and PSKUs are that, here's a really big important one, FSKUs can be paused. So this is kind of huge. It changes our whole mentality around these premium capacities. And they also start at a much lower price point. So if you have a P SKU today, you have Fabric. The number on the SKU tells you how many capacity units you have available on average per second, which is very hard for my brain to understand, but it's going to be very important. Also, there are some limitations to consider, which we'll go into. And it's also important to know that your usage is averaged out over time. All right, part 2 is the OneLake storage. This is the easiest, $23 per month per terabyte in US West 2. So that one's much easier to manage, monitor, and consider. And then 3 is Power BI licenses. So these are only necessary for your Power BI items in Fabric, not your other workloads. And they are required for Power BI developers, just like today in Premium, and sometimes for consumers, depending on which capacity you buy. It's also important to notice that PPU includes no non-Power BI Fabric workloads. So PPU kind of changes things with Fabric as well. Next slide. Okay, so going back to the hard part, estimating your capacity needs. So there's a huge range. So before we had P1 to P5, but now we actually have F2, which starts much lower price point than the P1, and it goes all the way up to F2 2048. If you like trucks, this F150 thing might be right up your alley. So some things to note are how much capacity units per second you get with each capacity. So that's basically what the number on the F is. So F32 is 32 CUs per second. F256, same. This chart also tells you which capacities require consumers to have a paid Power BI license. It's the same as before. Before it was P1 and above did not. Now it's F64 and above do not require it. F32 and below do. This chart also tells you the hourly cost if you do pay as you go, the monthly cost, and then our best guess of what the reserved instance pricing will be based on the equivalent P SKUs. Okay, next slide.
Everybody got that? There's a quiz coming. Okay, so you want to start planning, you're ahead of the curve. What do you need to consider? The first thing that you need to consider is how you're going to plan your workspaces. And this is something that you've needed to consider in the past as well, but it becomes even more important when you consider that there is one capacity aligns to one workspace. And if you've got your trial spun up, you can see this in the admin portal under capacity settings. You can see which workspace is assigned to which capacity. That is really important to know because you could potentially, moving forward, separate things into Power BI and non-Power BI workloads in separate workspaces to be able to turn things on and off if you're really trying to carefully monitor and manage your costs. And then another just quick reminder, PPU workspaces don't support Fabric workloads. If you are using Direct Lake mode, which is pretty mind-blowing. If you want to know more, I'm sure there's another presentation on that. If you pause your capacity, Direct Lake mode won't work anymore. So important to know. And then last but not least, we suspect that reserved instance pricing is going to be on par with premium licensing. So our best guess is that it's going to be about 60% of the monthly pay as you go. So you want to purchase a reserved instance if your usage is expected to be 60% of the time or more. Everybody got that? Okay, so Stephanie, take us through how do we monitor this thing?
Okay, all right. If you're not already kind of overwhelmed, get ready. You're going to be. So pay close attention. Okay, here is the capacity metrics app. So if you are a capacity admin, you can go get this from the app source and you can start monitoring your capacity. And this is super important during a trial to start getting an idea of just how much capacity you will need. So the top right chart to me has been very, very helpful. This one shows you the little dotted line on the top, which is the limit. And then all of your activities are in there. If you see some spikes, you don't have to get scared because remember that your usage does average out. It's not unlimited. It's not like you can use all your capacity in 1 minute. There are guardrails in place. So this is called bursting and smoothing. They take care of it behind the scenes for us. It averages out the usage over the time period. Okay, but the bottom chart tells us how much each workload has used in a 14-day period. This will give you an idea of which workloads are more expensive, but it can still be hard to put those numbers with what your capacity means. So in this sample, we have used 2.8 million CUs in a 14-day period. That sounds like a lot to me. I'm kind of scared about that. But if I do a little math, I think next chart, we can see that if I multiply that 64 by, number of seconds in a minute, minutes an hour, 24 hours, and 14 days, I actually have about 77 million capacity units available to me in a 14-day period. So this is just an illustration, not sanctioned by Microsoft in any way. And remember, there are guardrails in place, so I can't use all 77 million at once, but it does help me understand a little bit more how much is available to me in that whole time period. Okay, next slide. Just a couple more things. What we do and don't know. Right now, we know that the Power BI Premium features are included in all the F SKUs. So even F2, you get the Power BI Premium features. We know which type of licenses are required and when. And we know that user licenses are not required for non-Power BI Fabric workloads. What don't we know? How much OneLake storage is included in each capacity. We know there will be some. We don't know how much. We don't know row limits for Direct Lake mode. And what this means is that if you go over that limit, it will fall back to direct query, which none of us ever want. We also don't know what the limits, for data activator, real-time analytics, not limits, but what the cost is. of Data Activator, Real-Time Analytics, and Copilot will be, because those are not yet in the Capacity Metrics app. Whew.
Okay, so
Right.
go forth. We're not going to jump too much into this, but the best way to figure this out at this current moment is to just spin up a trial, build out some workloads, and start monitoring. In the Capacity Metrics app right now, you can monitor your capacity usage and your OneLake storage. Keep an eye on that. Make sure that you understand what's going on so you can start to think about what your workspace strategy is going to be. Stephanie has built out a beautiful calculator where you can take a look at Power BI licensing specifically. We're going to be updating that as soon as we have more information about Fabric. So stay tuned. That's what we got. So thank you so much. I hope that this is just crystal clear in everyone's minds.